Hi, this is Ewan Smith for AE Tuts with a quick tip which will help you create curved motion paths using expressions. Here's an example. I'm using the expression to drive a particle system and create a 3D spiral. I won't lie to you, you need to use some maths for this, and I know the mention of any kind of maths sends some people running for the hills. This trick is really simple, trust me. I'm going to use a light and trap code particular to demonstrate how the basic effect works, but you can actually apply the same expression to almost anything inside of After Effects. It can be a null or an image or a solid. Anything which has a position property can be controlled this way. So let's start with a new comp. And this is a 720p comp, 20 seconds in length. And we're going to be working in 3D, so let's add a new camera. And we'll go with a 20mm preset. And also add a new light, which will drive our particles. And we'll rename the light to emitter. Next, add a solid. Let's rename that as well. And now we'll add trap code particular. Let's change a couple of settings before we move on. Go to emitter and increase the particles per second to 200. Then go to emitter type and change it from point to light. Particular will now use any light in the comp called emitter as its particle source. Drop the velocity to 0 across the board and drop the emitter size to a single point. And let's also increase the lifespan of the particle to 20 seconds, the same as our comp. Okay, let's add the expression. Go to your light and press P to bring up the position property. Then Alt or Option click on the stopwatch so that we can add our expression. Let's make a little bit of space. The first motion we're going to create is to send our light around in a perfect circle. A circle is formed by rotating a point, in this case our light, 360 degrees around a center point. Let's first set our width or radius of the circle to 300. We want our circle to draw on with time, and there's a handy expression for that, just called time. But time is calculated in seconds, and a circle is 360 degrees, and we don't want to wait 360 seconds for a circle to appear, so let's multiply that by 200. Now we can use the built-in math functions sine and cosine to work out the x and y positions of where the light should be, based on the angle we've just set and the radius of the circle. So add in x equals radius multiplied by math, there's that word, dot cosine, just cos, degrees to radians, angle, and then close the parentheses. We use degrees to radians because although we think of a circle as having 360 degrees, After Effects doesn't measure angles in degrees, it uses radians, and that function does the conversion for us. And then similarly for y equals radius multiplied by math dot sine, which is the complement to cosine, degrees to radians, angle, close the parentheses. Now we're working in 3D space, so we also have to set a Z component. At the moment we'll just leave that set to 0. Next we have to set the center of our circle, otherwise it will default to the top left corner of the screen and we won't see all of the circle. So center equals 640, 360 and 0, which is the center of a 720p comp. And then we need to add the center value and the values of our circle together. Add center, comma, x, y, z. And if we check out how that looks, you can see we have our light, and as we scrub through the timeline, it draws a circle. And remember, we're in 3D, so if we change our camera angle, just hit the C key, you can see we have a 3D shape. Just undo that move. Now, one thing you may notice here is that the actual circle itself isn't perfectly smooth. There's some break up in that line. That's a very simple fix. If you have particular 2, if you go to particular and then to position subframe, change that from linear to 10 times linear, and you get a much smoother effect. This simple maths expression lets you do other shapes too. Say you don't want a circular path, you want to do something more complex like a spiral. All we need to do is to bring down the radius of the circle as the light travels around it. Select your emitter layer again, hit U to bring up the expression. All we have to do is add a new value, which increases with time. I'll call it shrink. So shrink equals, make some space, time plus 1. The plus 1 is really important here because we're going to divide the radius by this new value. And if you divide anything by 0, you get an error. So it has to be at least 1. And let's change our radius to suit. Make it a little bit bigger so we get more of a dramatic effect. 1000 divided by shrink. And if we click on that, you can see now we have a spiral forming. As I scrub through the timeline, it gets tighter and tighter. And also, if you switch to your camera view, click C on the keyboard, you can see again we're working in 3D space here. If we go into our expression again and let's alter the Z value, change that to time times time. In other words, time squared. And we're now moving the Z value into space. Although it's not very dramatic at this point, if you move further down the timeline as the time value gets bigger, you can see we're now creating a really tight coiled effect. And if you change the particle type, this would look like a really convincing wormhole or whirlpool kind of effect. So the expression is really simple. All you need to do to get some fairly dramatic effects is to change a few numbers, maybe change the particle type or apply it to something different like a solid or a null or even some video footage. Here's an example of something you can do just by changing the particle type. So this is the spiral expression we've just done, using particular with a cloudlet particle and attached to 4 lights instead of 1. So have some fun, experiment, see what you come up with.